Hello again. Welcome to the closing bell. Today we're going to have a bit of a look at the Infotech index that I had a chat about in the article I wrote on the Money Weekend website. And I'll also have a look at a sector that I think is starting to catch a bid. It's a pretty unloved sector, I've got to say, and it is the mining services sector. I'm seeing a bit of buying across the board, even though it's from very low levels. I'll show you those charts, but I think that is one sector that is definitely seeing a bit of sneaky buying going on, and I think it makes sense. So I'll tell you that story in a minute. But looking at the index as a whole, the ASX 200, look, what can you say about it other than it is absolutely dead and boring right now? We've had a month of just sideways price action within a 100-point range. We're sitting at the all-time highs, but just above the old all-time high from early last year. So I'm just a bit nervous of the false break potentially being on its way. But the trend has been so strong. So you've got two pretty big forces meeting each other, and at the moment it's a stalemate. So let's have a look at the chart just quickly, just to show you what things are looking like. This is the ASX 200, and let's just get rid of a few of these. This is the ASX 200. That is a pretty dull old chart, right? So there's not much you can say about a market that's spent a month in a range going nowhere fast. There is definitely no momentum. Of course, the banks and resource stocks, those large caps, that's why the index looks so strong. In the article on the Money Weekend, if you did read it above the video, the index looks fabulous when we look at the long term. It's up and has rallied for a whole year, and it has broken out above the old all-time high. So really, it could just continue on to the upside. There's no sign yet where you'd be dumping positions at all. I'd actually need to see prices below and, weekly sell pivots, even a monthly sell pivot from here. I'd like to see some real selling pressure before I get concerned as far as, lowering my exposure to the market. But it is just an area where I know it sell-offs can begin from this sort of a spot after breaking out to new highs, dragging new people in, doing a bit of work for a while, maybe even another final spike, and then all of a sudden the thing tips over and shakes many people out. So that's the only warning sign is that fact. But the momentum is still very strong to the upside. Now, in the article, I wrote about the Infotech sector and just was saying that it was looking a little bit toppy. So I just wanted to quickly cover that off for you, get a bit of a deeper technical analysis of it. This is the weekly chart in that Infotech sector. Obviously, it's been a fabulously strong trend and has been for a long time. But just note that we've peaked out in February, in early Feb. We had the initial wave of selling. There's obviously buying support. Now, this is the 20-week simple moving average, and we've got the 1 and 2 standard deviation Bollinger Bands around that. And that can just be support and resistance. And you can see prices finding support where you'd expect down in that zone. But also the selling pressure is there. And we still haven't taken out that February high. And the selling pressure is stepping in where you'd expect to see it if prices were going to turn down. Because if I just look at the whole wave higher, and this is, the zones that I look out for is that sell zone and buy zone of the wave as sort of key areas where reversals often happen. So we have had, enough selling to almost bring it back to the point of control of that wave, up from, 2020 to early 2021. But we are seeing the selling pressure at the top of that sell zone. The weekly sell pivot was confirmed 2 weeks ago. That's that candle there. when we got a weekly close below the low of that highest price candle in the move. And then just last week, we've had another week of selling with Afterpay, etc., getting hit on fears of the big boys moving into the BNPL, buy now, pay later space. So we've seen a bit of selling there, but obviously it's been a bit more across the board because the whole index, just looking a little bit soggy at the moment from an area where you'd expect it to find selling pressure if it is going to have a bit of a bigger correction. So right now, in the short term, that Infotech index just looking a little bit soggy to me. And as I was saying, I need it really to break out above those highs from late June and March. If prices find support here and break out above that level, then things will look fantastic again and off to the races to the upside. But while that high holds and the weekly sell pivot is the most recent pivot, as long as we don't get a weekly buy pivot soon, basically it's saying that you should expect to see a bit more selling pressure in that tech space. Now, the area I wanted to quickly discuss was the mining services. There's a few stocks that I think are looking pretty interesting. Well, one of them is DDH. This is a new listing, so there's not much data to speak of with this one, but this is, they own drill rigs. And as they say, when it's a gold rush, you want to be buying the company that's selling shovels to the gold diggers. So these guys are really doing that. And you can see it's been quite a strong trend so far, rallying from around 80 cents to a high of $1.20 since they listed. They've got about 100 rigs, about 280 mil in revenue, and I think about 69 mil EBITDA, which is pretty healthy margins. And, with about 100 rigs focused on sort of gold and iron ore, but many other sectors as well. They could have a bright future. So, I'd be possibly looking to buy sub $1 if it could get there. Looking pretty interesting to me long term, though. It's not a bad investment in these guys that do just sell the... Sorry, can you delete that? These guys that just rent out the drill rigs and just make a clip constantly. So as long as there's lots of exploration going on, they're doing well. McMahon's, and these are just the mining services that are all looking pretty interesting with some buying coming in. That's McMahon's and Macca Proprietary Limited. We've got NRW Holdings and also Parenti Global. Now, these stocks have been under pressure recently due to the fears of the lockdowns and the labour shortages that are happening. They're having to pay up to get enough staff to do the projects that they're doing. So Parenti was one that warned recently. They sold off really hard. You can see there from $1.25 down to nearly 50 cents. But the buying is starting to step back in because it is actually a booming sector. There's lots of projects out there. And usually people hate the mining services sector because it is so capital intensive, so low margin. But when things do turn, they can start to spit out quite a lot of cash quite quickly. And they're all trading on very low PEs. So all of a sudden, these companies, as you've seen in the past, they can have some really strong trends when the cycle turns their way and they start making a lot of money and their PE starts expanding. All of a sudden, it's good times again. So looking at Parenti here, again, I'd be looking at the wave up from 2016 to 2018. And I'm looking at that buy zone of the wave. We've had the massive rally and then the huge shakeout all the way down into that zone. We've already had a bit of a bounce out of that buy zone. You can see there, back to the point of control. And here we are again in the middle of that buy zone and possibly creating a monthly buy pivot this month. So, looking interesting. And the fact that really the buying is across the board. If we look at McMahon's as well, they've been trending up well in the last few years, but have trod water really since 2018, 2019, but they are looking pretty interesting to turn back up again. The way I'd look at this, obviously you can see this is the monthly chart. So that's the 20-month simple moving average there. I've got the 1 and 2 standard deviation Bollinger Bands again. And really when the market is trending up, I'm looking for, the reversals sort of down in that zone, 1 to 2 standard deviations below. Then we're looking like potentially setting up a monthly buy pivot this month at the end of July. And I'm also looking at the whole range that we've had where it sold off pretty sharply from above 30 cents down to about 15 cents. And again, I'm just looking at the buy and sell zones there as the areas where I'd expect to see reversals in price. You can see on the upside, we've had a couple of moves out of the sell zone there up to the point of control. And here we can see buying pressure coming in that buy zone, and with a monthly buy pivot this month, just looking interesting to start trending up again. So moving on to just a few others just to finish off. Macca has been hit hard as well. This is all on the fears over the costs, but they have lots of work in hand coming up and trading on a pretty cheap PE as far as I'm concerned. And if we look at this one, they rallied in 2020 to 2021, taking off on the fact that we were seeing strong growth in demand for their services. And then we've got the, fear and worries about the COVID shutdown and not allowing in workers from offshore, just really putting pressure on margins, increasing costs with labour. But really, we've had this initial wave higher and it's pulled right back into the buy zone of the whole wave. And we're now seeing the reversal, potential monthly buy pivot this month. And so we've had the, tax loss selling and really bottomed out in that tax loss selling. And it's really bouncing back quite nicely after that. So obviously that was the final pressure on the stock. Again, that mining services seeing some buying across the board. Really, it's a similar story in the other ones. NWH as well has had a nice long uptrend and has done a bit of work over the last few years. So again, I'm just looking at that huge pullback. We're looking at the reversals in the sell zone, reversals in the buy zone, in direction of this longer term trend. So just an interesting spot where I think it could start to pick up from. Also, finally, PRN, similar story. This is the one that did have the announcement, and I showed you that just earlier, that move. So really all of them looking pretty strong in the very short term, bouncing back from the tax loss selling. And really, I think long term looking pretty cheap and in booming sectors. With WA mining boom really gathering pace and all commodities looking pretty good. So, that's probably the area that I reckon there could be some opportunities for you going forward. So check them out, do a bit of your own due diligence, and I will come back with more next week. And be sure to click the link below the video to check out my two services. I run the Australian Small Cap Investigator, the investment director there, and also Pivot Trader, which is for more technically minded and more shorter term trading and investing. So yeah, check them out, and hopefully I'll see you as a member of those one day. All right, cheers, and I'll come back with more next week.